and they're more resilient like during labor and after birth as well. And so there's so many benefits to exercising that it's like very, very frustrating when
Yeah.
folks are being told to not exercise. And I'm not blaming the person for being concerned and kind of holding themselves back physically out of fear, because there's so much fear mongering like externally kind of being pushed on us during pregnancy.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with Gina Connolly, the founder of MamaStay Fit, an online and in-person resource for pregnancy fitness. In this episode, we discuss myths and misinformation about exercise in pregnancy, the many benefits, and when to get back to a postpartum exercise program. And of course, we'll chat about Gina's brand new book, Training for Two, a must read for all expectant moms. And now I bring you Gina Connolly.
Hi, everybody. You are very welcome to the next episode of the Tracy Donegan podcast. And today I am again delighted to welcome the lovely Gina Connolly from MamaStay Fit. If you're not already following MamaStay Fit on the socials, get out there, follow them today. There's so much really incredible information to help women feel strong and confident in their pregnancy and preparing for birth, and of course postpartum as well. So Gina, you're very welcome. Delighted to have you. Delighted to reconnect. It's been a while.
It has been. I'm really excited to be here as well. I think the last time we had a face-to-face conversation, I was in my second pregnancy. It was quite a few years ago.
Yeah. So and you are, tell us about where you're at in this pregnancy.
So I am currently pregnant with baby number 4. I'm 30 weeks, almost 31 weeks now. So I'm in the third trimester, nearing the end. And this baby's due the end of August, which is just a little bit before my book comes out, which comes out in September. So hopefully the baby comes first, not the book. I would be a little sad if I am still pregnant middle of September.
Yeah, probably. So I want to jump right in. So you have a new book coming out, and for the life of me, I keep calling it Fit for Two, and it's Training for Two. I don't know what Fit for Two is. Stuck in my head. So if I say Fit for Two, just ignore me. But I guess, tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to this point where it's like moms need more resources. Let's actually get all of this out of my head and into a book.
So I started MamaStay Fit in 2017 after the birth of my first daughter, where I felt like I just didn't have any real resources to help support me with exercising during my pregnancy. There was a few perinatal, prenatal fitness focused companies out at that time. But it was the programming I didn't love, or I would do a little bit of it. But overall, there just wasn't a ton of resources. And I think there's so much more now out there, especially on social media, with different folks that have taken pre or postnatal fitness courses. But when I was pregnant in 2016/17, there was not a whole ton out there. And so I just kind of spent my whole pregnancy just kind of doing what I did before, with modifications based on what felt good for me and my body, but just kind of just trying to move in general. And I had pelvic girdle pain, where I went to my provider and I was like, hey, I am having a lot of hard time walking. My workouts are really painful. And the solution was, well, when you give birth, it'll go away. And I was like, well, that seems like a really long time. I was 5 months pregnant at this point. And I was like, that's a long time away to not be able to walk. So I ended up seeing a chiropractor who helped kind of adjust my pelvis. And that brought me a ton of pain relief. And I was able to resume my workouts, which really helped with managing the pelvic pain. But I didn't really know what to do other than that. I went through my birth, postpartum, same thing, was kind of what am I supposed to do to help myself get back to pre-pregnancy level of fitness, or just get back to being active in motherhood? And I now understood that there was a pelvic floor, and there was all these things that could happen to your pelvic floor. And so I'm trying to move my body confidently, but feeling very scared of it, because there's all these buzzwords out there of prolapse, your organs are falling out, and this. And so I actually avoided going to a pellet floor PT for about 8 months after giving birth with my first, because I was scared that they were going to tell me that there was something wrong. And I was like, I'd rather just be in denial and not know. But during this time, I founded my company, MamaStay Fit, which specializes in pre and postnatal fitness. And we also offer childbirth education courses now. And I started working in person at a gym and was exclusively training folks within their pregnancy and in the postpartum. So they would bring their babies to the gym, and we started really kind of experimenting and developing our programming and figuring out like what actually was working for folks. I went back to school, got my bachelor's and master's degree in exercise science. And so now I had this educational background, did my whole thesis on exercising during pregnancy, and then just kind of kept like studying and observing, started attending births in 2018 or 19, I started attending births in person. And so now I had this like full spectrum, like awareness of what was happening during a pregnancy, what movement was happening during birth, and then in the postpartum in someone else's body besides just my own. And so that was something that was really unique about my experience with MamaStay Fit. Was I wasn't just creating programs and writing education courses based on my own personal experience. I was able to write these courses and programs based on a great multitude of women's experiences. So how a ton of my prenatal clients were moving through their body, what movements felt good for them, which ones didn't feel good, what modifications made sense at different points throughout each pregnancy. Everyone's birth is so different as well. And so if I only educated based on like my individual experience in birth, like it would be a huge disservice to so many. Like there's no one best movement, there's no best labor position or pushing position. Like there's so much nuance to it. And so having that in-person birth experience really helped me to understand, all right, these are the type of movements that we need to do during pregnancy to help somebody move better during their birth. And so then it was like, okay, well, this is all the stuff that's happening during someone's birth. These are all the things that are happening during their pregnancy that impact their postpartum recovery. So this is how we need to design this program to support people as they recover after birth. And so like we have a really large online platform now so we have like thousands of folks that do our online programs, but we also have like hundreds that do the in-person one, which is really what helps us to develop this program based on all of those observations. And so now we're in 2024. Last year, a publisher reached out to me and asked if I wanted to write a book, kind of collecting all my information. And then I wrote way too much and we had to cut a lot of the books. So hopefully it'll become a series of books. But it's essentially just me collecting as much information as I could into a word count limit and page limit of how you can move throughout your pregnancy, because there's so much fear involved with whether or not movement is safe. Like, is it going to harm your baby? Is it going to cause you to have a miscarriage? And then like, well, if you have pelvic pain, like just don't do anything. Or if you have a diastasis, you shouldn't exercise. And then all of this fear kind of continues postpartum, because now we have all of these buzzwords and things that aren't like fully explained of like, oh, you have a prolapse, and then there's no guidance given. And then folks are scared to move their bodies and to live a full and active life because they're like, well, I don't want to make it worse. Like, I don't want to make my diastasis worse. I don't want to make my prolapse worse. And there's so much support that they can have throughout their pregnancy and as they recover postpartum. And so that's kind of what we're trying to achieve with like our programs, with the book, is to help people move confidently throughout their pregnancy, because movement and being active is so beneficial for not just your pregnancy, it's incredibly beneficial for your birth. It helps you recover easier postpartum, and that just kind of extends for like lifelong health and for the lifelong health of your children as well. And so I always get really frustrated when folks are like, it's better to be safe than sorry. Don't exercise. It's so dangerous for you. And it's not. Like, it's so beneficial. That's kind of how I got to where I am now, is just lots of observation, working with in-person clients, had the opportunity to also work with online clients. And so that's MamaStay Fit at this point.
Fabulous. And I think it's so beyond ridiculous that we're at this point in, in the evolution of the human race, that movement is considered an intervention because, if we look at, again, when we were living back in caves or whatever, whether you're pregnant or not, or, you got up and you moved every day. You had to go and forage and it's just that. But now we're trying to almost cocoon women from what we think something could be, like something as simple as movement and pregnancy could be harmful to them, when we know, like, there is so much evidence there how, sedentary lifestyle, no matter, what part of life you're in, is almost as bad as smoking. So it's like, it's just strange that we're at this point where we think of moving your body, exercise, as an intervention. What are mothers saying are their biggest fears about exercising, and when to start exercising in pregnancy?
So usually the two biggest fears is it's going to cause a miscarriage or like impact the length of the pregnancy, so cause a preterm labor, or it's going to impact baby's development. So they're scared, like, if I exercise, the blood flow will go from my baby to my muscles and it could negatively impact their growth. And so those are the two main fears. And I think the one with the miscarriage and with, like, it's going to harm your baby in some way are also like the biggest things that are pushed on people as reasons to be afraid. And so we'll have folks that don't want to exercise in their first trimester because they're scared that it'll cause a miscarriage. And research has, like, multiple times, like, over and over demonstrated that that is not true. Like, there's meta-analysis that look at it that go, hey, like, exercising in your first trimester, even high impact, high intensity exercise, lifting weights, does not increase your risk of miscarriage, because 1 out of 4 of us are going to have a miscarriage. And it's really tragic and it's really sad, but exercising did not cause it. And so when there's this belief that exercising causes miscarriage, if you just happen to be one of those 1 of 4 that has a miscarriage, now you have this additional burden of guilt, because you're like, oh, well, it only happened because I was working out. Or you have some asshole that tells you, like, oh, well, if you didn't lift weights, like, you wouldn't have had a miscarriage. And it's like, well, that's not true, though. Like, there's so many benefits to exercising. And research has repeatedly demonstrated that it does not increase your risk of miscarriage. Like, 25% of pregnancies end in a miscarriage. Like, it's a really high percentage, and it's just really tragic. And so that's always, like, something that's super frustrating for me. And so then when you have, okay, well, what if I'm at the end of my pregnancy? I should stop exercising because it could cause preterm labor. It's like, well, not necessarily. Like, there's no movement that is going to induce your labor. Now, if you are having preterm labor, like contractions, or your water has broken early, or something else has caused you to go into labor, I would not then go to the gym. Like, I would probably go to my birth location and seek additional help. So I think that's kind of why folks think, like, it can cause preterm labors, because movement during labor can help kind of move your process along. And if you are having pre-labor or preterm labor symptoms or issues, like, you may get put on bed rest, which there's a whole conversation on whether or not that's beneficial. And so they're like, oh, well, movement not moving is the solution to stopping preterm labor, which, again, we can have a conversation all about that. So therefore, exercising must cause it. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't. And so exercising is not going to impact the length of your pregnancy.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about evidence-based care in labour, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support is so important to us and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
If anything, there's so many beneficial things about exercising that could improve your pregnancy and improve your baby's development, which is the other thing that folks get really concerned about is this going to harm my baby? Is exercising selfish for me? Like, is this going to impact my baby negatively? And so the biggest concern is it going to make my baby too small? So have IUGR, so where a baby is not falling off their growth trend and is just not growing how they should be anymore. And that could be related to the placenta. Well, exercising during your pregnancy, especially the first half, can improve your placenta development and function. So it can make it a lot bigger, which improves its functional capacity. And the placenta plays a big role in preventing some prenatal complications that can happen later on in pregnancy, which could mean that we're decreasing the risk of developing them. Some research says anywhere from like 30 to 40%. That's pretty significant. If we don't have a prenatal complication at the end of our pregnancy, the likelihood of us needing a medical induction is significantly lower, which could impact how your birth goes, which could impact your postpartum. And so if we have a better functioning placenta, that's pretty helpful. And that's going to help kind of decrease the risk of your baby developing IUGR or having their growth impacted. The other concern would be like, the other way that baby can go is get too big, which is probably not going to happen if you're exercising throughout your pregnancy, because your risk of developing gestational diabetes is significantly lower as well. And there's so many things that we can do to help support if for whatever reason you do develop it, even if you are exercising, because it can still happen. But if some of the risks with baby being really big is you have like an potential increased risk of shoulder dystocia, especially with gestational diabetes because their shoulders are bigger. Well, some of the things that help kind of decrease the risk of shoulder dystocia is not having an instrument-assisted delivery, so not having forceps or vacuum. And one of the reasons that you may need forceps or vacuum is maternal exhaustion. So you are just too tired to push. And if you've been exercising and you have good stamina, the likelihood of that happening is probably a lot lower as well. So the concerns, is it going to impact my length of my pregnancy? Is it going to affect my baby's development? And the answer is no. Like there's no research that supports that it's going to cause miscarriage. If anything, the research says it doesn't. And then there's so much evidence out there that supports that exercising during your pregnancy is so beneficial for your baby's development. Like it improves the placenta function and improves their brain development, improves their nervous system development. Like they have greater blood volume when they come to birth. And so they have more stress, like they can tolerate higher levels of stress during labor. They transition better when they come outside the world, and they're more resilient like during labor and after birth as well. And so there's so many benefits to exercising that it's like very, very frustrating when folks are being told to not exercise. And I'm not blaming the person for being concerned and kind of holding themselves back physically out of fear, because there's so much fear mongering like externally kind of being pushed on us during pregnancy.
And even just to go back to the first trimester, because I think that's a time when I think a lot of moms are, you've got a lot of fatigue in the first trimester. So you might not want to, go hell for leather, lifting weights and whatever in the first trimester. But I also see it's that idea of it being harmful is kind of perpetuated out in the community. Like I have, moms local to me here that were looking for a pregnancy yoga class, and nobody in the local community will take them before 12 weeks. Now, and I understand that the yoga teachers are concerned as well, but I'm like, please, like, go read the evidence. These women are the women who are ready to exercise and knowing the benefits. Like, it's just, and connecting in with a community of other women early in pregnancy, I think is just so valuable as well. So I'm like, so they're saying to me, they won't take me. And I'm like, oh, for yoga, never mind the gym. I could see, like, I could imagine if they were walking to their local gym and anyone in the gym knew they were in first trimester would be like, oh, like this is, do we have, insurance for these women, and yeah, it is. I agree. I share your frustrations. So are there, I guess, a common question that I will be asked is there anything at all, positions or types of training that women should avoid in pregnancy? Or is it just, I guess, I'm assuming it's going to be individualized based on mom herself, but is there anything out there that's like a red flag that, oh yeah, see this here, we don't do this, or we would avoid this in pregnancy?
So really any exercise that's going to increase the risk of like blunt force trauma or like increase your risk of falling. So like skydiving, I wouldn't skydive during pregnancy. Like horseback riding, where you potentially have an increased risk of getting thrown off the horse, probably not beneficial. Some folks even say like bicycling, like not a stationary bike, the ones that move, potentially, because your risk of falling could be a little bit higher. That one, I guess, is just individualized, whether or not you want to. But anything that's going to like increase your risk of falling onto your belly, like potentially would not be a safe activity to do. But other than that, there's really not a whole ton of movements that are like red flags, no's for everybody. It just depends on what's happening with you. And so exercise, obviously, for every single person who's pregnant would probably not, it would be hard to say that it's beneficial for every single person. Because if you have a pre-existing medical condition where exercise is contraindicated pre-pregnancy, it's probably also going to be contraindicated during pregnancy. And this can involve things like cardiovascular issues, like respiratory issues. If you have like some significant thyroid issues or things where you've already been told to kind of limit your exercise will probably continue into pregnancy. And then more of the complications that could develop towards the end of pregnancy, like your water broke really early, like you're in preterm labor, like you have uncontrolled like gestational diabetes or preeclampsia, like those kind of complications, like exercising would probably not be beneficial, but those are going to be individualized. And that would be like a conversation that someone would be having with their provider. Now, in regards to like, should you do hot yoga, which is like another big question that we get, like, yes and no. Like your ability to dissipate heat is significantly better during pregnancy. Our bodies are very smart in trying to protect this pregnancy at all costs. And so we have an increased ability to keep ourselves cool during pregnancy. Now, this doesn't mean that we should go do jumping jacks in a sauna. Like if a normal person would not exercise in that environment, you should probably also not exercise during pregnancy just for your own comfort. But if you want to do hot yoga, it's a practice that you've been doing pre-pregnancy, like you feel really comfortable with it. Maybe be by the door, maybe have cool washcloths, or maybe just choose a different class. Like if you're like, this is just really uncomfortable for me. And so that's what I would really encourage folks to do during their pregnancies with movement, is just to really tune in to what messages their body is communicating to them, like truly communicating to them, and let go of the ego and just be open to, this movement feels good for me in my body today. This one is not feeling great for me. So for me personally, during my pregnancies, like running doesn't feel great for me. It is really uncomfortable. It causes me pain in my abdomen. But other folks feel really comfortable with running for longer periods throughout their pregnancy. And so to say like running is bad for everybody would not necessarily be like a fair thing to say. However, like at some point we need to be realistic and like really listen to what our body is saying, because at some point running will probably not feel great for you. Like lifting your weights in the same weight and the same type of movement may not feel great for you at a certain point during your pregnancy. And so being open to modifying and adjusting is going to be really beneficial. And I find that this like mental release of the ego is so beneficial for transitioning into labor and into motherhood as well, because there's so much surrender that needs to happen when we make it to birth. And so if we spend our whole pregnancies like really tuning in to what our body is telling us and adjusting movement based on what feels good for us, and like truly honoring that, and like not worrying about how much weight is on the bar, how fast are we running, like what our workouts look like just focusing on what feels good for me today, to include rest days, like adding those in, that's going to really translate so well into labor, because now we're going to be more readily available or more able to let go of our ego and surrender to whatever that process looks like. Maybe contractions are a little bit harder than you anticipated. Maybe labor's a little bit longer than you were hoping for. Maybe a complication comes up during your labor that was outside of your control. So letting go of the ego is going to be so beneficial for navigating labor more confidently and to have a more empowered experience. And then it translates really well into motherhood, where we're like, well, I've been listening to myself, to my gut, to my heart throughout my whole pregnancy. I did it during my labor. And now I'm going to continue to do it postpartum into motherhood, because there's so many other people trying to talk to us and tell us what's best for us, when really we just need to tune into ourselves. And so, so we can use our fitness to kind of tune in, really listen to what our body's saying, and let go of the ego, as those would be my main ways to move throughout your pregnancy. It's just I didn't know any of this stuff for my first pregnancy. For whatever reason, I was able to just tune in to myself and let go of the ego, and it served me really well. And that's with no knowledge on what was best for me. And so we all already have the answers to what we need, even during our own labors. People move intuitively to create space within their pelvis. We have all the answers. We just need to learn how to listen to it and to trust that we do actually know what's best for us in each situation.
And that is, I love that. And that has really been a theme for me this week of work with different clients, and as we say in gentle birth, control the controllables, and that idea, especially towards the end of pregnancy, of acceptance and surrender. Because I know my own experience working with clients who are very focused on well-being, and fitness is a big part of their lives. I think sometimes they do find it hard to to kind of step their intensity level down a little bit and really, really tune into their body. Because I've seen moms that have, been going to spin class, like, and I'm like late in pregnancy, and I'm like, okay, so how is it feeling for you? And I think part of it, one mom did say to me, she said, it felt good, but I love I'm addicted to the endorphins, and I love that rush of, but then, when I spoke to her a couple of days later, she felt like I feel like, and this was 36 weeks, I think. She was like, I think I'm overdoing it. And I think I'm looking at the scales as well, because I don't want to put on too much weight, because I don't want to have to deal with that afterwards, and the bouncing back. Cultural ridiculousness that I'm sure you hear frequently as well. But I do love that surrendering and really tuning in, because you do know more than you think. And although, I love your book, and I think, and especially the QR codes, because when I'm looking at a fitness book and I'm going through, I'm like, oh, I can read the instructions, but if I can see somebody doing it, I just love that you have the QR code. So it's so easy to really, to embody the instructions and the different movements. But yeah, that idea of being able to just drop down into the body, because so many of us live from the neck up, and pregnancy really gives us an opportunity to tune into that huge, like, unlimited knowledge base that we carry in our body, but we're so in our heads that we often miss the cues or dismiss them, when our body is saying, I want to just slow it down a little bit. But I think that idea of, because I feel it myself, a lot of my clients who are very much fitness, I would say fitness mad, because like these are marathon runners, and like this is like, fitness is such a big part of their lives, to get them to really just tune in even more than you already do, and just not slow down automatically, but just tune into the body, and practice some meditation to, if you feel like you're stuck in the endorphin buzz all the time, and wanting that lift. So for those moms who have enjoyed exercise during their pregnancy, and again, I guess based on what kind of birth experience they have, a question that always comes up is, how soon can I get back to exercising?
So the normal wait window is 4 to 6 weeks. That's usually when someone will see their provider, get the all clear, whatever that means. So, and some providers do a little bit more in depth of an assessment to how did your stitches heal? Do you have a diastasis? Let's do an assessment for prolapse. And so some providers are more in depth with their assessment. I find probably most are not, because they're limited time. They can only see you for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then they got to go to the next patient. And so it's really just a mental check-in. Are you still alive? Cool, we'll see you later. And again, that's not every provider. Some of them do have more opportunity. And then there are other professionals out there that could help support you in the postpartum, like a physical therapist, which is going to be much more movement focused, and maybe a better source to seek out after you give birth, to check on that diastasis, to check on prolapse, see what's going on with your pelvic floor. They can do scar mobilization as well, both for a perineal scar and for a C-section scar, which are all things that can really impact your function after birth. So seeing your OB and your midwife after you give birth may just be kind of a overall assessment, and then seeing a more specialized person can be really beneficial after birth as well. But that 4 to 6 week window is also a really long time to do nothing as well. And so there is some movement that you can do starting as soon as you give birth. I wouldn't be super crazy about it, or scheduled or structured with it. It's just breathing. Okay, can I move my pelvic floor, move my diaphragm again? Can I just reconnect with whatever just happened to my body? Some gentle mobility, just moving the body in a way, thoracic mobility, hip mobility, whatever's feeling good for you, but super gentle, just supported movements. So we're in bed, maybe we're in a supine position laying on our back, just kind of rotating the spine from side to side, because in that early postpartum, we just kind of get like stuck in positions because we're just like trying to figure out everything that's happening. And so just gentle mobility can be super beneficial as well, just for your own comfort at this point as well. Going for like super short walks, maybe when you're like 10 to 14 days postpartum, like definitely really emphasizing rest is super beneficial immediately after birth. And then if you have the opportunity, like around like the 2-week mark, maybe that's when we're going for our walks and starting to integrate some of the gentle core movements. But again, still very unstructured, like nothing that I would say like do 3 rounds of 10 reps for this many times by any means. Like in that first month, we're just reconnecting and just moving however feels good for us, bonding with our baby and kind of leaning on the support that we have during that time. Once you kind of hit like the 4 to 6 week mark, right around like the all clear, usually your bleeding has kind of stopped at this point postpartum as well. And so this is usually a good sign that it's a good opportunity to begin more structured exercise. But again, super gentle, like we're relearning movement patterns. We're in a new body. Like there's no bouncing back. Like we're just kind of like jumping forward, I guess. Like our bodies are different after we give birth, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. Like things just change. Like your skin's a little bit looser, like your hips are a little bit wider, like, and so there's going to be a reconnection that happens as we kind of figure out our new normal in our body. And so we're just going to slowly relearn movement patterns, like slowly kind of build back up, like in a rehab program, to get back to the sports or the movements that we really love doing. So if you really love running, we need to start with like some low impact movements first to build strength again, to bring that single leg, build that single leg hip stability, like, and then slowly integrate higher impact movements over time, and then slowly make it back to running. And so you're probably going to be more than 3 to 4 months postpartum before you're like actually running again, because running is a very advanced movement. It's a high impact movement where you're bounding from leg to leg. It's requiring a lot of single leg hip stability. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done before we get to that point. And same with lifting, like 6 weeks postpartum, we're not going to be in the gym PRing our deadlift. Like that's going to be like a 6 to 9 month postpartum type of thing that we're going to be doing, because we have to rebuild our ability to manage pressure, to like build a strength again. You just took a month off from the gym at least. Like, and you probably weren't lifting super heavy at the end of your pregnancy, or at least not close to your pre-pregnancy weights, or hopefully you weren't, like maybe you were, I don't know. And so there's a bit of rebuilding that has to happen, and patience that's involved with it. But you can start doing some gentle stuff right away after birth, but again, really unstructured. Don't feel like you have to, though. And then once you kind of get the all clear, all the bleeding has stopped, like 4 to 6 weeks postpartum, maybe even up to like 10 weeks postpartum, we could start like a more structured rehab focused program that's just kind of slowly rebuilding and being very patient with the process. Like how we support our postpartum like journey in these first few months can really impact us long term as well. Because if we rush the process and we don't take the time to reconnect and reestablish our deep core, like reestablish hip stability, we're going to have more roadblocks and like obstacles along the way. And so we're going to end up prolonging our healing journey. And this happens with a lot of like the elite athletes that work with us. It happens a lot to the normal athletes that work with us that are rushing it because they're like, I need to get back to what I was. And then 6 months down the line, they're restarting our program because they're like, well, I should have just not done all that right away. Like I should have taken the time to like rebuild. And I'm like, it's okay, we're here to support you. And so for our athletes that do just trust the process and they're very patient with it, they're lifting heavier and running faster than they were pre-pregnancy when they're like 9 to 12 months postpartum, because they were patient with the process. And it takes time for our tissue to heal after birth. And there's a lot of healing that's happening that's like underneath the skin after birth as well. And also like the greatest thing that you did, like you made a person. That's like you made your own human being. Like that's really cool. And so I think just kind of reframing what it means to be a mother and what it means to be like to move in our bodies again after birth is really important. And I think just acknowledging like you just did something like incredible, like you made a person. Like it's okay to take your time. Like postpartum like is forever, but like this initial healing time and being patient is a really short period within our whole athletic career. Like yeah, so 4 to 6 weeks is when I would say you could, but take your time.
Yeah, and again, listen to what your body is saying. I think the evidence is very, very clear that exercise in pregnancy is exercise all your life is really good for you. It's but what I found fascinating was, and I think it's especially for the postpartum moms, is that, with levels of postpartum depression, and that how exercise can be so beneficial for mental health as well, because it's you've just had this huge transition and so many adjustments with your emotional state. And I remember the one of the a paper that came out years ago, and it was saying how moms who have low to moderate symptoms of depression could really help themselves by walking, by joining a mom's walking group. And I thought, wow, our kind of first level of evidence is not to give antidepressants, which is, lots of moms use antidepressants and need them. That's great. But for moms who are thinking, what other ways can I help myself, that exercise can actually be a part of that in maintaining, more healthier mood. And do you see that in your moms as well, in like their postpartum?
Absolutely. And one of the other things that I think contributes towards the moon is if you're having like physical issues in your body, like you're experiencing pain, you're leaking, like you have symptomatic prolapse, like your diastasis is not healing. Like these are all like physical symptoms that can impact us mentally as well and just be like really disheartening. And exercise can be really beneficial to kind of alleviate a lot of those symptoms as well. It could help you feel pain-free throughout your pregnancy and postpartum. It can help to relieve those symptoms of prolapse. It can help to improve a diastasis. And so that can be something else that's contributing towards somebody's like mental health, is like, well, here's another thing that's going wrong with my body. Like, I don't know how to fix it. And it's like, well, exercising could be the answer to a lot of those things. And even during pregnancy as well, like the pelvic pain and the lower back pain, like all these discomforts that make it uncomfortable or painful, like exercising and strength training can be really beneficial to alleviating those symptoms, to help you move easier, which then helps improve your mental health as well. So there's so many benefits to just exercising, like just in general. It doesn't have to be crazy. Like you don't have to spend 2 hours in the gym, like lifting super heavy weights to find benefit from exercise. Like my top recommendation is just to find a movement that feels good for you, that you enjoy doing, that if it's going for walks and that brings you joy and it's enjoyable for you, that's wonderful. Like move your body in that way. If it's doing yoga, do yoga. Like if it's lifting weights, lift weights. Like do whatever makes you feel excited to move your body, that helps you feel good in your body. Like that's going to be the best exercise for you. Like there's no blanket statements of everybody must lift weights the way that I do during my pregnancy to have a good pregnancy. Like, yes, there are certain movement patterns that I would say are important to incorporate, but it doesn't have to be with lifting weights. Like you can incorporate those movement patterns in a yoga practice or while you're walking or whatever feels good for you. Like movement is just so beneficial. And there's like so many hormones that get released when we are moving our bodies, when we feel good in our bodies. Like getting outside with like some sunshine just feels really nice as well. So I definitely see that our clients, especially the in-person clients, they just seem like they transition really well, because one, they have a community that we're all like kind of in the same phase of life, to normalize experiences that they're having. It can feel really isolating at first. And then they feel more comfortable in their bodies. Like, and if they are having more issues, like we have resources and there are people out there that can help them. So we have our pelvic floor PT, we have a chiropractor, we have a massage therapist. Like there's resources out there to help people feel more comfortable in their bodies as well, which I think absolutely supports mental health.
Yeah, friend. And it's because, like for me, the mental part of it has always been my baby, and it's when we see all of these things tied in together, even, being outside and getting sunlight, all of these, they're all connected, and getting to bed on time and turning off the blue lights. So what would you say? What would be your top 3 tips for a pregnant mom who maybe has not had a fitness, like followed a fitness program, and she's like kind of new to, like, wants to help herself, help her baby? And what would be the 3 tips you would suggest for her, for somebody who's just starting off, and where do I begin?
So if you have like very limited like fitness background and you don't want to write your own programming and you're feeling very unsure of like where to even start, this is where I would recommend working with a professional. So either an online source, so like we obviously offer our online programs, like an in-person one could be a really great option as well. Like I find it really hard to beat like the in-person interaction, especially during pregnancy when you're trying to figure out movement. So if you have an in-person prenatal fitness trainer or like pelvic floor PT or somebody that can work with you like in a specialized setting, I would like highly recommend that as well. So even like a personal trainer that has more experience with pregnancy. But if you can't find an in-person, joining an online prenatal specific program can be super beneficial. And there's so many different options out there as well with different formats of programming and workout deliveries. And so we have like our app-based program, which is a list of exercise with demo videos. If you want to work out self-paced, that's a good option. And there's a lot of different apps out there as well. Some of our movements can feel a little bit more complicated than like other programs, and like they're more complicated for a reason. But if that feels like overwhelming, there are other programs that have like more simple exercises as well. Not that simple is bad, just different. And then we also have like on-demand videos, where videos that you follow, and there's multiple prenatal trainers that also offer on-demand programs. They have prenatal yoga classes. And so seeking somebody that can like just give it to you that's like in a specialized way can be super beneficial. Obviously, like I'm biased towards our own programming based on our experience with in-person and online clients and all of that. But there's a lot of really great options out there. So one, I would say work with a professional to help guide you, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel and like learn everything all by yourself. Like you can establish a team to kind of help you move through your pregnancy as well. It's not just to figure it all yourself, like, and then do your thing. Like you can make a team to help support you. The second thing is going to be, again, find something that you enjoy doing, especially if you've never done it before. Like it needs to be something that you are going to willingly go to without having to force yourself to do it. And so if it's finding that movement that feels good for you in your body that you enjoy doing, is going to be so much more beneficial than like choosing like the very best prenatal fitness program ever. It's the one that you're going to actually do. And so if that's okay, I only have 20 minutes that I feel like I could reasonably work out, finding something that allows you to work out for 20 minutes. If you're like, nope, I want to do a full hour, like that feels best for me, find a program that offers an hour-long workout program. So finding something that feels best for you is going to be super beneficial. And then the third thing is going to be, we also want to make sure that we're choosing a program that is specific for pregnancy, because prenatal workouts need to be more than just pregnancy safe exercises. So it needs to be more than programs that omit jumping and omit crunches. Like we need to make sure that we're moving in multiple directions. So we have movements that are side to side, that are rotational, that are front to back. And so those are going to be the movements that really help to improve pelvic mobility, to make it easier for our babies to move through our pelvis. And obviously there's like a lot more complexity to that as well, but like we need programs that are designed specifically for pregnancy to help you prepare for birth. And we have like a whole chapter on like birth preparation exercises and what to include in your prenatal fitness programs as well. And like you were saying, we have the QR codes, so it's videos that you can watch. Because for me, like the written descriptions and like a picture is nice, but there's so much nuance to like our movements that like if you do this slight little tweak, it really just brings you so much deeper into it. But it's hard to like write that. It's just so much easier to show. And so the videos can be really helpful. So our book can also be a really great resource for somebody that's wanting to like figure it out, or maybe you're already an athlete and you're like not sure how to adjust your programming to like accommodate for pregnancy as well. Like we offer tons of modifications and like things to kind of do within your programs as well. So find a professional, or either a professional in person, an online program that's specific to pregnancy. Like find something that you enjoy doing. That's really important. And then making sure that we're moving in different directions within our programming is going to be really, really important when it comes to exercising during pregnancy.
Great tips, Gina. And I would also say, just for any moms that are out there listening or watching that and are feeling the pinch at the moment financially and are thinking, oh, I would love a personal trainer, but that's just not on my budget now. I think, or you can't get to a yoga class, just get your running shoes on and get out the door and walk. So walk around the block, and if you work, sitting most of the day, that set an alarm that, every 40 minutes, or you've got your smartwatch that'll tell you to just stand and move around and just, walk up the stairs and just to have that consistency of movement throughout the day, instead of the one block of time where we do all the movement and exercise and then we're sitting for another,
Yeah.
6 hours. Because that's really helpful for managing blood glucose as well. So just little things like that can, again, help build your fitness without having it to be this hardcore lifting mad weights, as I would say. Gina, this has been great. So tell me when the book is coming out, where people can find it, and your socials, and I will include everything as well in the show notes. When's it coming? When can people get your book?
It comes out September 10th, 2024, so a little bit after this baby is due. Hopefully I will be early postpartum when it's released. But yeah, you can grab it on Amazon. You can grab it at Barnes & Nobles for the pre-order. And yeah, I think it's only like $24 or $25 too. So I think it's pretty affordable for the information that's in there. And yeah, there's some mini workouts and stuff in there too as well. If you're like, well, I don't really want to dedicate to a whole program. There's little workouts within the book as well, which I think are very helpful.
And where can people find you online and find your programs?
So we're on all these different social media platforms at mamastefit.com. So it's like namaste, but with an M at the beginning. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. Pretty much anything that we post on TikTok, we post it on Instagram, though. It's too much to try to create two things of content. We have a YouTube channel, which is also at MamaStay Fit. And then we do have a podcast, the MamaStay Fit podcast, just to make everything like very coherent across the board for us. And then our website is just mamastefit.com. We have prenatal fitness programs, postpartum fitness programs, and we have childbirth education and professional courses. So we offer our programs in a lot of different formats so that you can figure out what works best for you. We have workouts that are 15 minutes long. We have hour-long workouts. We have self-paced workouts and also video-based programs. And so we understand that a lot of people like to work out in different ways than we do. And it's kind of the beauty of MamaStay Fit is we've developed our programs based on working with other people than just ourselves. We didn't just get pregnant and then write a program. Like, we actually work with in-person clients. And so we've had these programs that we've been developing for the past 7 years now, and we just continually improve them based on like new research that comes out, what we find works for our clients. And then we have our childbirth education course to kind of complement it all as well, because we just really want moms to feel confident and empowered with movement throughout their pregnancy, with their own birth experiences, regardless of what kind of unfolds. Like, you can still have a really empowering experience with an unmedicated birth, with an induction, with a cesarean birth. But it's all about how we're kind of mentally approaching it as well, with the education and the information that we have. And so it's really our goal to help us transition into motherhood feeling so empowered and confident, because it's just really going to change the next generation. Because if we have a whole conglomerate of really empowered women moving into motherhood, like, they're just going to kind of continue that with their children, and that's kind of how we change the world. So, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Gina. Great to chat again. I've read the book. I think it's fantastic. I hope everybody will enjoy it as well, and the videos. And yeah, thank you for writing it. It's going to be a really helpful resource for many, many moms to come over the next few years and longer. And as you said, into the next generation. We're, epigenetics, microbiome, all of that, all affected by, our lifestyle as well. And yeah, here's to a healthy, strong next generation of little people that we're bringing into the planet.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.